All right. Hello, Nottingham! Guys, one more time. Hello, Nottingham! Great. Hi, guys. I'm Adam Savage. Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Believe it or not, that is me. That is 12,500 people in the Royal Arena in Copenhagen. Feel more nervous right now, weirdly. I don't know why. But it's going to be great. This is actually an opportunity here to talk about my life in esports. Everyone's an aspiring student of this amazing thing, an ever-growing industry as well. My role primarily is an esports host. Have you had many esports hosts talk to you before at all? No? Yes? No? No? I'm going to be here to answer all those questions you might have. I know everyone's studying production and kind of behind the scenes as well, behind the camera as well as in front of. I'm quite a unique entity in the esports world in the sense that I've been on both sides of the camera quite a lot, both across esports and television, and hopefully give you guys something to take away, some insight that you wouldn't usually get, that hopefully I can help you with down the line as well. But as you can see, multiple different things I've done over the course of my career today, and I'll divide this kind of chat into two different parts. The first part is going to be a bit of a kind of a storytelling, how I got into esports. The second half will be more focused on esports, all right? I may even have some crowd participation as well. Would you like to come over here and do that with me? Yes? No? Yes, good, yes, good, very good. All right, so first things first. I'm going to throw back to the very beginning of my gaming journey. Can I say that, gaming journey? First things first, I want you guys to shout out, what was the first game you ever played? Do you remember that? And if it was, just shout them out one by one. What was the first game you ever played? Mario, Rust. That's the first game, Rust, okay. What was that, which Mario? Which Mario was the first? Any of them, right, fine. Yes. Mario 64. I'm really old. But Mario 64, great on the Nintendo 64. Anybody else? Any other games? Yes. On the Game Boy Advance, yes, speaking my language. Anybody else? Halo 3, okay. Mine goes back a bit further than that. Okay, I'm going to show you some bits and pieces from the beginning of my gaming life. But before that, you may not know who I am. Most probably don't. Some might do. I thought what I'd do is show you a bit of a show reel from last year of things I have done to date, give you a bit of taste, a bit of flavor of what I've done to date as well. And I can go back through that a bit later on and go more detail. But this is the really embarrassing part because it's about me and just about me. So I'm going to kind of quiver over here in the corner while you enjoy this. But when you guys are ready, you can press, I think I can press play here. This is a show reel of mine from last year, a bit more of what I've been up to in my career today. So here you go. Walk away as your FNCS NAE Chapter 3 Season 1 champions. Can Booga and Miro claim their crown once more? That's what we're here to find out. Welcome back into FNCS Finals NAE. It is day 2. My name is Adam Savage. I am delighted to be your host. It is gonna be superb today. We're gonna find out by the end of the day who your champions are of this region. Now, I could say every accolade under the glistening Fortnite sun to that wouldn't do justice. These exceptional analysts alongside me. Fellas, Vivid, Somebody's Gun, welcome in, boys. The three of us here on the panel tonight breaking down all the action for the lovely viewers at home. Vivid, this is what it's all about. Day 2 of finals. We had an amazing day 1, and today is heating up, baby. Break it down for what's coming our way. Hello there, and welcome into a brand new episode of The First Hour. Today we're going head-to-head, toe-to-toe with the almighty Battlefield 2042.
So I've played Battlefield 1,
great.
I've played Battlefield 2,
awesome.
I've played Battlefield 3, but I haven't played the other 2039 Battlefield games up to 2042.
No.
Will this be a problem?
No, this is set in the year 2042, that's all.
Right.
That's all.
So Battlefield 1 was set in 1 AD?
No.
In the barn?
No.
In Nazareth?
No, do you mean Bethlehem and the manger in the barn? No,
yeah.
that's not a thing.
No.
That didn't happen.
That didn't happen because there was no room.
No.
Right, and that's why they call it a frankincense grenade.
It's a frag grenade. Can we just roll the thing, please? Let's just get going. He's annoying me already. Hello. Hiya. I've got a seriously monstrous
gaming PC delivery here for kids.
This is so weird meeting you, because me and my dad used to watch Jinx Esports.
Did you? Okay.
Every morning we'd have it on.
We've actually got so much gaming stuff here for you. So the real hardcore question here is, can we put the kettle on?
Guys, first and foremost, can I just say on behalf of the entire internet, thank you for that most entertaining game of FIFA. Snoop, we loved every second.
Hey, thank you so much. It's been an honor and a treat to play in the FIFA Tournament 2020.
Myself, Dan, and Mark, the commentators, were saying that in your English accent, you're going to put us out of a job. I mean, you could totally do what we do.
No, you know what? Ever since I've been playing this game since the early 90s, I would do that. I would be my own analyst because I felt like I could talk the game and play the game. But I really love the game, and I thank y'all for letting us be a part of it.
Ladies and gentlemen, your duo's champion, Sapper Tate! Not only a birthday boy, now a champion. Fellas, how do you feel right now?
I have no words. I don't know. It's a weird feeling.
They need to do Big, Naked, and Afraid Brother.
Big, naked, and afraid.
Brother.
Okay.
Where people are naked. And there's cameras all the time.
And they're afraid when they're naked? Of
Wouldn't
being
you be?
naked? Yeah, I would be very afraid.
Yeah. And it's Big Brother, but everyone's naked.
Yeah.
It'd be like, Shelby, bring your naked tits to the interview room.
Shelby, bring your naked tits to the interview room. Now, there is someone who I'm super excited to meet. I've been thinking about this a lot. My main man, right over here. Here he is. He's the big guy. Dr. Disrespect. There he is. How are you feeling this evening, buddy?
Man, I'm feeling good. Like, look at me, right? Like 6'8", 37-inch vertical leap. Look at the jawline. Look at the black steel that drips down my black AKA, the bulletproof mullet. Like, look at me. Look at me.
I'm looking. We're all looking. Do you know what? I'm loving the suit as well.
Yeah, yeah.
One thing missing.
Yeah.
The flak jacket. Where's the bulletproof vest?
It doesn't matter.
Okay,
right?
fine.
Hi, Rafferty, it's me, Daddy here. Now, when you get older, you're probably going to think, Dad, what did you do as a career? What were your career highlights? And I'm going to say, well, sometimes I travel around the world doing live events with some of the most amazing audiences on the planet. Isn't that right, Copenhagen? I told you.
Be honest with me. Have you cheated on me? I can't trust him anymore, Lucy. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm here
so
for you,
glad.
Adam.
Please tell me that there's plenty more mobile security gadgets in the sea.
Well, it's goodbye from me and Dan, and it's goodbye from these guys. Thank you all. Bye.
There you go. There's some things that I did in my career today. Not bad, eh? Thank you very much. Thanks. I saw a lot of people going, oh, is that Snoop Dogg? Is that Snoop? It was Snoop. And believe it or not, that was during lockdown, during COVID. I was in my pajamas, in my bedroom, just chatting to Snoop Dogg. Bit weird, but hey, we all had to work somehow during, which was a pretty crazy time there. But I've been very lucky over the course of my time as a host as well to meet a lot of people, work with a lot of people as well. And as we get forward into the kind of presentation, I'll go more into detail of like who I've worked with to date. But to go back to games, I asked you at the beginning, what game kind of kicked things off for you guys? Okay, obviously, a bit older than most of you, a lot older. Things for me, gaming in general, kind of obviously is a narrative that kind of has been a part of my life from the very get-go and is a massive part of my life now. And it all started right here. Does anyone have a clue what this is? Anybody? Absolutely no one. Thank you in the back. Very good. Thank you. Back in the day, you've heard of the Nintendo, the NES. Have you heard of the NES? Yeah, I think great. So back in the day, my first experience of games in general was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was called Hero Turtles in the UK, because apparently Ninja was too offensive in the 80s and 90s. Hero Turtles, the Nintendo, it was Christmas morning. My dad, from Santa, gets the brand new Nintendo Entertainment System, and I remember turning this thing on. I'd never really played games before. I was about 8 years old, and it completely changed my life. I found myself, I'm sure you have the same feeling with games as well sometimes, where you find you play games, you're completely immersed in it, engaged with it, and you think, I love this. This is definitely for me. And that Christmas morning changed everything, and I found myself playing Nintendo relentlessly. And fate would have it as well. It moved on to this kind of era. Do you guys know what game this is? Yes? Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo. Now, in a really random chain of events as well, my dad worked in advertising growing up. And he gaming wasn't huge back then. It was Sega versus Nintendo, Sonic versus Mario. And for whatever reason, my dad's particular company called Publicis, managed to get the Nintendo contract to do the advertising for Nintendo across the world, right? So the Nintendo was the biggest system there was. There wasn't anything else. The Nintendo was the console. The Super Nintendo was around 6 months away. I go to my dad's office, as like we do every year, and kind of hang out with my dad and kind of play like Wolfenstein and Doom on PCs. He didn't really have PCs at home. But he says to me, do you want to see something real special? And I said, yeah, of course I want to. He took me into a boardroom. I'll never forget this. There's a boardroom, a massive table. I mean, I was young, like 9 years old. Huge table, and at the very end of the table was a Super Nintendo. It wasn't out for 6 months. Remember, I'm 9 years old. Everyone wants to play the Super Nintendo. And in it was the cartridge of Street Fighter 2. The very first, I think no one really had played it bar me in the country. I sat there for about 4 hours just playing it. I mean, the upgrade from this to this was pretty massive. I mean, everyone feeling me at the back there? 8 to 16-bit? Big vibes. Thank you. Yeah. Massive change. Just like the Master System to the Genesis, or Mega Drive as we called it. Massive. Played for 4 hours. My dad comes to the end of it and says, we have to go home now. How would you like to take it home for the weekend? I mean, I think we broke every embargo rule on the planet, but still, it was fine. I went home and then again continued my journey into gaming, and fun things happen across the way, like, look at like Mortal Kombat 2. I think we're on like Mortal Kombat 10 now, so this is like a long time coming, but Mortal Kombat 2, we used to have like German students come and stay at our home to earn some extra cash back in kind of the mid-90s, and I remember we had 2 German students that came to visit us, and in Germany, Mortal Kombat 2 was banned. Games used to be banned in certain countries, really, really strange. It was banned, and I remember this German student gave me £40 in the early 90s to get him a copy and send it to Germany. I was like, yeah, definitely, I'll definitely do that for you. He went back to Germany. I kept the £40. I have no idea where he is now. I just kept the money. That's me. But that was one of those things where Mortal Kombat 2, all these kind of games kind of were I didn't realize it back then, but the kind of beginning of my entry point into making it my career in the future. As time went on, something very special happened as well. You saw Dr. Disrespect in the last clip, didn't you? You guys, anyone watched him at all? Everyone seen his streams? He always claims that he was the two-time Blockbuster video game champion. I was one too. I'm not even joking. It's legit. Back in the mid-90s, have you heard of Donkey Kong Country, the game? Have you heard of this? Right. Yes! Thank you very much. Okay. This game was the nuts. This is a good game. Really good game. And some people still speedrun it to this day, but Blockbuster Video, should I say, was a place where you'd actually go and rent. Have anyone heard of Blockbuster Video before? Yeah, you have. Yes, good. Okay, we have heard of something. Blockbuster Video was massive, obviously. It was where you would, you couldn't stream content. You had to go and get, rent videotapes and rent kind of DVDs and whatnot. And back in the mid-90s, they ran this competition. It was called the Blockbuster Video Game World Championship 2. Now, you can see the rules here on screen. I don't know if you can make it out here, but the rules are pretty simple. I don't know how this happened, but I found this online like the other day. And basically, this game, even though it wasn't the full game, the challenge was that basically you had 5 minutes to complete as much of the game as possible. That was the whole thing that this competition was. And I perfected that. I was really good. I smashed it. But they kind of somehow in America sold the game just the first 5 minutes of the full game. Completely mental. I don't know who's buying that, but people do buy that. Those are the rules there. But I remember that was my first kind of experience of a competition. I remember I was the regional champion for a couple of weeks. My name was kind of all over boards around the country. Adam Savage, Blockbuster champion. I felt very good. And I see Dr. Disrespect saying, I'm thinking, come on, man, I actually am one. I mean, he may have been too, but this was a big deal for me back then. And it was one of these things where my friends weren't really that inclined to play games too much. But for me, it was a real big factor. And it added to that kind of, once again, the story of like what games meant to me and why I loved it. And I started to compete at that young age in competitions like this. Now, obviously, hosting. This is where I'm at today. I'm a host primarily, a stage host and desk host across esports. And as I said, I'll go through the ins and outs of all that later on. But of course, it's a freelance economy out there. You guys all know this, I'm sure, as well, from me talking about the last few days, that we work in a world now where you get contract to contract, depending on whether or not you work behind the camera, in the production team, and the competition team, player management, or talent on the broadcast talent and things. It's a freelance economy, and I wanted to pursue this dream of working in games in some capacity, but I don't know how. I'm sure everyone here obviously wants to find work as soon as they finish university, finish college, and find work in the gaming industry. And it is a lot of hard work, but it's also kind of finding your feet and making those connections. It's networking, finding your way into the business. And for me, the only way I could support what I was doing was by finding other means of work. When I was 19 years old, I finished my A-levels, and I was like, right, I want to work in... I didn't know if gaming was for me, but I knew that I wanted to work in front of camera to some capacity. I was at stage school for a bit, doing those kind of things. And lo and behold, when I was 19, where did I go and work? Disney World, obviously. When I was 19 years old, I went to work at Epcot as a cultural representative of the United Kingdom. I mean, I blagged it. I don't know what I was doing, but it was a job and it paid money. I thought, yeah, this sounds really good. Let's go to America for a year when I'm 19. And it was amazing. I went to America, made loads of good friends, independence, all those different things that I wanted to try and achieve. When I was out there, I started to kind of do a few auditions, a few castings for things as an actor and things like that. But I never really felt that comfortable in my own, in other people's skin. I felt comfortable in my own, though. And I kind of realized that maybe presenting was a way forward. Hosting things was a way forward. I was relatively confident. I had, I guess like, I had drive. I was proactive. I thought that this could be a thing. But of course, back in like the mid-noughties, like 2005 and 6, like, TV was still the primary way of getting in front of like camera. YouTube hadn't really kicked off yet. Things like that hadn't really happened. That was like 2009. And I kind of didn't see that wave coming. And I pursued this presenting dream of mine. And then finally one day, I had a kind of an email come through from a casting agency. And they said to me, hey, we're called Jinx Video Gaming TV. Has anyone heard of Jinx Esports TV at all? You guys heard of that? Okay. So Jinx Video Gaming TV was headed up by the same guys that did MTV. Guys that were at Viacom previously at MTV wanted to create a video gaming channel all about games, which sounds amazing, okay? But for me, I was coming in grassroots. Like, I was really new to this. So I had to cut my teeth doing things like creating, like, Tiger Woods PGA, I don't know, 5, actually, PGA 10 videos on, like, the top 10 clubs, that kind of stuff. Like, real writing things, scripting stuff. Learning from the real beginning how to get into this world of hosting in some capacity. And the best thing I could do is be in a channel, being at a network where it was going on all around me. I was finding that people were writing in one area, editing in the next. There was voiceovers going on. We were all creating in this kind of like little microclimate a TV channel. And it was the most perfect place for someone like myself to kind of learn a trick of the trade, ultimately, to learn every single aspect of production, not just being in front of the camera, but learning about what happens behind the scenes, what you guys might go on to do one day, and learning about what happens in the production office, how that process comes together, working to timings, working to certain budgets, working to all these different things that are a big factor when it comes to productions in general. Now, I found Jinx TV, and I started working on a show called Planet of the Apps. And the reason you see this as well, this kind of arrow going through to this one here, is we'll get onto this in a bit, but Jinx Video Gaming TV eventually evolved into what it is today, which is Jinx Esports TV. Jinx Esports TV is currently on Sky. It broadcasts internationally, but it had this kind of transition from a video gaming channel specifically to an esports channel. And again, I'll go into that later on because it's kind of an interesting reason behind why that was more of a factor. But you can see here as well, if I click the right button, there we go. I mean, look at that. Look at this guy. Look at this guy. What a dick. What a dick. But he was, we had this presenting team. The whole idea was to create an MTV style, I guess, like network where you had like faces of the network of the brand that you could kind of associate with certain games. Now, I'm sure the same thing goes today, where you might like a particular esport, be it Counter-Strike, FIFA, might be Halo, whatever it might be. You have certain faces and certain talent that you associate with those games. They're kind of the face and the voice of those certain games. We want to do the same thing with a TV channel. There was a bunch of us now, and we were going to do different things, and Anthony has to work with the load. Neil now works more kind of like in racing. Lucy works for GameSpot, and she's in the US a lot of the time. But for a short period of time, this was for me a real moment to suddenly become, after all those years of grinding, trying to find my feet somewhere, finally at Jinx TV, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it was video gaming television. And it was very kind of like very traditional stuff. Like it was all 4-minute 30 style clips and segments of like certain games and certain kind of like reviews and such. And then you had like real formats like TV programs kind of in between it as well. But that was our squad. That was our crew. And then obviously from there, it went on to all these different things, these different shows. And again, the whole time I'm learning, always learning. Experience is everything in the business. And I think just learning always subconsciously as well, things that I was doing behind the scenes. Like, for instance, here, this kind of like Jinx kind of then grew, and you had more of a team. You had like an editorial team. You had a team that was script writing and kind of becoming faces and voices, not necessarily always on camera, but the voices of gaming in the UK. And then we had shows like Jinx Live, where we kind of started to develop these new formats where we were doing like live TV and live shows, and we weren't really, we weren't as kind of confined to just those script, kind of like that set amount of time. It was more kind of ad-lib, more organic. And shows like Planet of the Apps was a big one for me as well, because this actually got to challenge TV on Sky, which at the time for me, having been in like a kind of a cable network show, suddenly it went to Sky, and that was a big one. That was massive, and that was kind of awesome. From there, The First Hour. Has anyone heard of The First Hour TV show that I host? You have? Yay! Good lad. The First Hour has actually become quite a iconic show for the network, and it still goes today. Now, you can see the difference in what's happened, the evolution. The First Hour is a kind of like a Let's Play show. I'm sure you guys watch Let's Play stuff all the time, be it streams or VODs or that kind of thing. And here you can see, this is the first iteration of why am I that really weird facial expression? That's really gormless. Anyway, this was the kind of first iteration of The First Hour, back when it was like the Jinx video gaming TV, not the esports TV. There was lesser budget. You can see here, we're literally in an office. Everyone else is working away, like click-clacking on their keyboards and whatnot. We're in an office in the corner, just trying to make like as much content as possible, and they're churning stuff out there. And you can see that evolution later on into these kind of segments. This is the next. It was the next evolution. Was it slightly more of a kind of like a kind of a more, I guess, like shiny floor vibe, and then the show really elevated to studios, and we had like a proper setup, and it was much, much better. And recently, only back in October, we actually managed to take our show live to Comic-Con. So if you go to Comic-Con, we did our show live. Hope to go back again soon. But there's me and Ant in the middle there, still going strong about 7 or 8 years later. So again, it's all about experience and learning along the way, and the ad-libs makes a massive, massive difference when it comes to things like esports productions, because I'm out there on stage, and sometimes you can see like some of those shows, you've got 12,500 people looking at you. If you say something which is a bit random, you don't have something you can kind of come back with, it's a little bit daunting having 12,500 people looking at you. It's not always 12,500 people. It's obviously a lot smaller usually, but still, that kind of gift of the gab, that chatting, that able to kind of keep the energy up and keep it going strong was a huge part. And it's mainly down to learning from things like The First Hour. I have another video here, it looks like. No, I don't. I know exactly what this means. Now, I did this on purpose. I had my Jinx TV things going on. I had all my production work I was doing there behind the scenes, learning, as I mentioned. I was even directing a little bit, and I was doing all my producing. But what I stupidly did is I really focused on that one thing. I really focused on Jinx and Jinx only, because I was so committed and so part of the brand. And I showed you at the beginning that there was Jinx Video Gaming TV, and then it evolved into Jinx Esports TV. And that's when it was all gone. I put all my eggs in one basket. I committed to one thing, and I really, stupidly and naively, and it's a real lesson learned here as well, that at the time everything was going so well, and I was really focusing on one project. I wasn't diversifying, broadening myself out too much, because I was still learning, as I said, and I thought, hey, here's a channel here that I'm working all the time, pretty much permanently. But then in that transition to esports, that's when they kind of found that they wanted to push it in that direction and go more to competitive gaming. Because this is kind of like, this is around the time as well, like 2015, where esports is really starting to kick on now. Esports is really starting to get a lot more budget. I mean, we saw yesterday, did you see the Gamers 8 announcement yesterday? They've got a budget. They've got a, this summer, Gamers 8 is a massive esports kind of competition. They've got a budget, like prize pool of $45 million this summer. It is mad. And that's across like some of the games out in the Middle East. But this was in its infancy, esports. It was nowhere near that kind of money. And that is still ludicrous. But it was all gone. And that was a pretty scary place to be. I didn't know what to do. I was a host. I'd got all this experience, but I'd really committed to one particular brand. But then, in 2016, something pretty cool happened. And that's when I got my first actual taste of esports.
Call of Duty XP is all for you.
With the play that he's ever got. Stop it! How is this happening?
Dude, COD XP was awesome. It was so good. You can see that. It looks really good, right? It's a great event. It looks amazing. It was full of this immersive activations and all these great things in Los Angeles. And me, had the time of my bloody life. Oh, I loved it. It was great. You can see here that I'm with zombies and doing Nuketown, all these different things. And this has come due to the fact that I made a lot of friends in my time at Jinx who were working in different parts of the industry, working in PR, for instance, in public relations. And one of my mates, Henry, who's a good pal, worked for Activision as a part of the PR team. Now, I was very fortunate because, as I said, esports is just developing, just growing. And I kind of saw this wave. As I've been very lucky, I guess, in many respects, that I've kind of always tend to find a wave that I've managed to ride, and I've seen the potential of certain things. One of those things was more content around the esports world. Now, COD XP 2016 was great because not only was it myself, but it was a bunch of us were sent out to Los Angeles. And at the time, I was hired by the Activision UK blog to cover Call of Duty and cover the launch of the new game, Infinite Warfare, Modern Warfare Remastered. Infinite Warfare wasn't received the best, but still, it was really fun. And like Nuketown, one of their maps had like David Hasselhoff was part of it, and we had there was loads of us who were sent out, and part of that was a lot of the Call of Duty YouTubers. And I started to build this network of content creators who were out there making content for their channels. Because YouTube really started to pop off as well. And I thought that with the TV didn't really have the same opportunities. Online seemed like it really did. And a lot of people at the time thought that online was still much more inferior to traditional TV. They were like, online's nowhere near as big, it's nowhere near as covered or engaging. But how wrong were they? Because TV now is going a completely different direction, and esports is going or gaming in general has become so much bigger. But I had the chance here to kind of work with all these different creators and work with different YouTubers. And this led to a real opportunity here, because COD XP, ironically, the special guest that you saw kind of announced as well was actually Snoop Dogg. How random's that? But we had this amazing event, and I suddenly saw that I connected the dots, like kind of like a spark, when I thought, esports is like the way forward. I think competitive gaming is really going somewhere. And you can see here now that it was really starting to build this foundation where people were kind of really interested in competitive gaming. And Call of Duty and COD World League, or the CDL, was kind of one of the flagship kind of like esports competitions. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I kind of saw this as a part of my life that I really wanted to explore further. Lo and behold, I started to do esports hosting. Although I look at these blazers. It's changed a lot now, because at the beginning it was all very kind of smart. Everything was very kind of like real smart. And this event here, actually, ESL, this was the Halo Championships. I think it was 2016, actually, December 2016, was like a real first taste of a studio format with esports, and you had some kind of casters, and and when I say casters, I mean I use the term loosely. Most people were kind of really new. There wasn't really an industry of casters and analysts and broadcast talent or hosts. It was kind of a bunch of us who had the experience, had the knowledge about the games, who were hired and brought together to actually kind of try and make a great show, make something compelling, make something interesting. And for onwards and upwards, you could see here as well, these are clips here from the Blast Pro Series. The Blast Pro Series was a Counter-Strike I don't know if anyone has heard of Blast Pro Series. They have Blast Premier now. If you're a CSGO fan, you'll know Blast Premier. But it was an opportunity to be in front of crowds, audiences, make these exhibition esports type events, and to ultimately be on the stage, leading the charge, interviewing talent, chatting to other people about, the games. And, I had that kind of experience from my time at Jinx with the and obviously all other work that came in between, but the experience of kind of ad-libbing, of chatting to people, trying to be as personal as possible, and ultimately getting across a show start, finish, making sure I hit deadlines and hit kind of timings and such as well. I had all that in my locker. I had all that already from the experience I gathered before. So it was great for me because I was so used to being in that position. Now, I've said, what exactly does a host do? What do you think a host does in a show? You can shout out. Anybody got any ideas? What does a host do? Any ideas? What do you think it does? Yeah, go ahead. Introductions. Very good. It's very good. And that's a real good segue to my next little fun game we're going to play in a second. But we have introductions. Obviously, a show host will open the show, will introduce the show. Anything else? What else does a show host do? What's that? Links. Very good. Links. That's exactly right. Yeah, yes, yep. Making the crowd hype. Woo! Make some noise, guys. Right, that was absolutely shocking, wasn't it? Let's be honest. Make some noise! All right. Love to see it. Yeah, exactly. Hype is where it's at as well, because the energy is really important, because you think about it two ways. You've got the broadcast that you're watching at home. Let's say, for instance, you're watching, the Invitational. You're watching something that you kind of tend to watch on a regular basis. What you see at home on your screens is often, it's part of the show when there's actually a whole arena show going on as well, where if you're there and happen to be in the building, you experience the arena show as well. If you're at home, most of the time, you just get the core part of the show where it's mostly on the desk, and you're on the desk listening to kind of the analysts ahead of going to in and out of gameplay, and then kind of casting all the action as well. But a big factor, particularly as stage hosting as well, is you're in a situation where you are ultimately having to do exactly that, get the crowd hyped, make sure that everything is articulated well. God forbid you announce the wrong team to come out. That would be terrible. I go to say, it's Cloud9. Oh no, it's 100 Thieves. I'm now dead meat. That would be really bad. Those kind of things can, and they can happen. And I'm sure you could find some things on the internet where things have gone terribly. Not me, thank goodness, but there's been situations where you can get something wrong and it can really throw you, particularly if you're in a live broadcast situation where lots is going on. And that's when I thought it could be quite fun, actually, to play a little game. Has anyone here ever given hosting a go before? Ever tried hosting anything? Anybody? Have you hosted anything before? Yeah. What did you host? Would you like to give this a go now? Yeah. What's your name? Guys, give Ronan a big round of applause. All right, Ronan. Okay, right. So, now I thought this could be a cool thing to do. This could go completely hideously wrong. I've done two things here. Right? What I've done is this. Ronan, do you want to come and stand over here next to me? And this is uninteresting as well. This is another thing that hosting does. There are certain things in hosting where you have to be kind of really on it in terms of like etiquette. Now, can you see the difference? If I do this and say, "Hi, Ronan, how are you?"
How are you?
What? I'm asking, how are you?
Oh. I'm fine, thank you. Good.
Then if I do this. How are you? Can you see the difference?
Yeah.
So even things like etiquette with my arm going across as opposed to my arm doing this is those little tiny things that you don't think about, but it's just a bit neater. Does that make sense? Right, okay. What I'm going to do is this. I have gone ahead and I've written out a script, okay, for Ronan to read to you guys. Got to try and make it hype, Ronan. Got to try and make it hype, okay? I've also then afterwards got as well a secondary kind of opportunity as well. I can get one of you guys out here to do this, where ultimately I have taken out all the big chunks of script and I have made it abbreviated, and you have to make up your own introduction just by using the buzzwords you have on screen. Does that make sense? Okay, so what you're going to try and do now is you can do the bit here, from hello there, down to possibilities, all right? And see if you can do it. And I can hold this for you. I'll have the microphone there. And see if you can do it and deliver it. Let's say, for instance, the camera's right there, okay? And see if you can deliver it. Right, guys. Make some noise for Ronan, come on. You got this, baby, come on.
Let me read a bit. Yeah. Hello there, and welcome to Confetti Industry Week, Technologies Industry Week 2023.
Let's go!
My name is Ronan Buckley, and I'm delighted to be here with you today as we dive into the wonderful world of esports. This is designed to learn.
Keep going.
Yeah. This is designed to let you learn more about the incredible opportunities and availabilities to a talented tomorrow, and there's still so much left in store.
It's good. You did last bit there, and that's it.
Be in front of the camera, part of the production crew, players and management, or more competitive teams. Each of them has many roles and availabilities with endless opportunities for you all.
Give Ronan a big round of applause, guys. Thank you, mate. Thank you. It's not, Ronan, it's not easy, is it? It's not easy. It's not easy. And the last thing, sometimes you literally get into an opportunity where someone gives you a card the last second and goes, right, you're going on stage in 5 seconds. You go, right, okay, hello there, welcome to Confetti. And it's very difficult. Now, that's a lot of words, isn't it? Can you see that? That's a lot of words. It's a lot of words to say. Things like towards the end, if I go finish it off here and say something like, On that note, it's time we met today's two talented finalists competing for the ultimate prize of $100,000 and the glory of becoming champions. Woo! Audience, are you ready to meet the teams? Clearly not, but you can see here, like it's hard because you naturally have beats, and Ronan, I really put you on the spot. Then you did fantastically, mate, because it's very hard to be put on the spot here and simply read something out. Alternatively, other than a really wordy script, you can have just certain words. And a lot of presenters or hosts in the same role as myself will often break their script right down to the main words, the real beat words, that you make up your own introductions off the back of. Would anyone like to give this a go? Anybody at all? Any hands? No. Yes, go on. No one? Okay, no. If not, where's who? Okay. You want to give it a go? Come on. What's your name? Give Finn a big round of applause. Right, Finn. Very simply, those are the words there. And ultimately, all you got to do is try and make it into an introduction. Take your time. No rush.
Hello, welcome back to Confetti Industry of Creative Technologies Industry Week 2023. I'm Finney, and I'm going to be your host today. Yeah. Right, so we're going to be listing some esports roles and what students can go into after their educational studies, such as college and university. It's could be like casting, observing, hosting, blah, blah, blah. Adam Savage is great.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
They're
competing for $100,000. And then you can say, let's go to Jim.
Oh, okay. They're going to be competing for $100,000, and the champion title is Confetti Gauntlet 6,000. Jin's coming down onto the desk.
Everyone. Okay. Well done, buddy. Now, again, I really threw you on the spot there, Finn. You smashed it. It was really good, mate. Yeah, a lot of times with hosting, you often get yourself just a few words. You can see here, Finn was working with hello / the welcome, what exactly we're doing here, intro himself, and then you've got yourself the roles that are available to students here. Adam Savage is great. Thanks for saying that. Appreciate it. Competing for $100,000 and the champion's title. Let's throw to Jin and the desk to set things up. And it's about pacing. It's about beats as well. And it's sometimes there's also time restrictions, of course, as well. You're also in these situations where you've got to do all that in 60 seconds and deliver all those different beats. Otherwise, you're not getting the information out correctly. It can get really, really tricky. But very well done, Ronan, and very well done to Finn. You guys crushed that. That was very hard. So you did a really good job. Right. Let's move forward now into esports and towards the other side of what I kind of do as part of my career. Did anyone hear of this ever? Legends of Gaming. Did you hear of this? Okay. Now, I've been very lucky over my time here to work with a lot of creators, a lot of YouTubers and streamers, and luckily still do today. But Legends of Gaming was the first real taste that I had as a kind of a part of the creative team, the production team, actually putting this together. So Legends of Gaming was 21 of the biggest YouTubers and creators in the world. Can you name all these people? Do you know who this is? That's it, Shadow Lady. There's Herd of Buffalo, Ali A, Syndicate, Spencer. Yeah, we had loads. And this, bear in mind, this is back in like 2017. So this is kind of like this is a while. This is like 6 years ago. Smallish Beans. You had loads of different creators all coming together, and they were competing in Legends of Gaming. Ultimately, it was a YouTube channel which was trying to bring together creators. They go head-to-head, and it culminated in this, which is Legends of Gaming at Alexandra Palace. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you, okay? I've got experience as hosting. I've got experience doing different things in my career, some real cool things, from everything behind in front of the camera. But I was asked, Adam, do you think you could produce the whole of Legends of Gaming live? And I just went, yeah, definitely. hadn't ever done a production role in my life on this scale. Nothing at all. But they say fake it till you make it. And I had to try and do it because I was interested. I was confident in what I could do. And I knew enough about the creators to put on a show. And this show here, Legends of Gaming Live, was the first fully live event that I completely wrote and produced the whole show with Endemol Shine, who made things like Big Brother and those TV shows. But it was a real kind of a moment of clarity for me that after all these years of learning all these different skills as a presenter and as a host, doing my due diligence when it came to me kind of doing all my research into different things, because research obviously is a huge part of things as well. And as you evolve in the production space, you'll do research on certain games. If you're covering some League of Legends, but you don't play League of Legends, you're going to want to know a bit about League of Legends to kind of know exactly what you're looking for when it comes to vision mixing or looking for certain things. Or if you're kind of, if you're part of the ops team, you want to make sure that you know exactly what kind of plays the audience at home will want to see. And for me, that was a real big factor as well. It was pairing as well. We had all these different games that we had access to, and it's pairing the right creator with the right game to compete against a certain person in the right kind of space. So a lot of it was real learning. And for me, it was a real kind of moment of realization that gaming had morphed from me, not just into hosting, but it was about production, that kind of side of things as well. Hence talking in the beginning about being behind the camera and in front of the camera as well. Now, this went on to a lot of really cool things, as you can see from the screen here. I'm sure you guys recognize who this is. Yeah, Mini Minter. You got Syndicate here. Do you know this guy? Dan TDM. Exactly. And then we've got up here as well, do we know these people? We've got Vic, Allier, exactly, and we've got Claire as well here. Now, because of my work with Endemol Shine, because of these creators, I became quite I hate blowing my own trumpet because I sound like such an idiot, but still, I became kind of a unique entity in the space in the sense that I was one of the few who was a host, but also a producer at the same time. So what I could do was actually these shows you see here, like this was from us when we were in Abu Dhabi at Gamescom. This was Lego Live in New York. This is Insomnia, which got another show coming up soon with the Dan TDM show as well. What I made sure to do is I made sure to kind of befriend and network and work with as many different creators as I possibly could to make sure I gave myself the best opportunity to get ahead in the business. And I think that's one of the interesting things as well about when in the esports space is network is really important. The amount of times as well, and not just with on stage talent or on desk talent. I'm talking about behind the scenes too. A lot of the times, even to this day, so many production friends will kind of reach out to others to get the right people that they know and trust and respect into positions and share different opportunities with them because the networks are so big. And it's really important to grow that network within the space, and you can do some amazing things. Now, these shows as well here were a great opportunity to be in front of different clients, work with people like Lego was amazing, and work with so many of these different things. Again, it was all gaming show based, but the world of esports and the world of competitive gaming to a degree is really starting to grow now. We're really getting into the kind of area where it's getting bigger and bigger all the time. People have a lust for seeing not just creators go head to head, they've got a lust for seeing other things too. And it came to, this is a really flattering photo, but this came to fruition for me as well when I was asked to host the Esports Awards. Now, the Esports Awards, anyone seen the Esports Awards before? The Esports Awards? Yeah. So the Esports Awards is an annual competition, and I was very lucky to be one of the main hosts. There's me and Disrespect again up there. Well, ultimately, it brings together the entire world of esports. Well, the pro players, that used to play, from like Optic or from FaZe, as well as all the kind of talent, all the broadcast teams as well, and productions and brands and such, and put them into the same melting pot to all kind of network and meet each other and give out awards too. It was an amazing experience, and it was for a few years now. And I met, again, it all came from being at the beginning of esports and being there as it grew onwards and upwards. But then comes to this kind of time as well. Again, esports is then starting to create third-party events, or certain kind of publishers are. So, Riot Games, for instance, who produce the likes of Valorant and produce League and such, they had their own broadcast teams going on. And I very early on managed to get into a little game called Fortnite. I'm sure we've all played Fortnite before. Anyone not played Fortnite? You've not played Fortnite? Wow, you're the only three in the world. But I think at this point, Fortnite was very in its infancy. Fortnite, I think, been out for 1 year. I think it was 2018 this happened. And the Katowice Royale was in Poland. It was the first real ESL, I'm sure we've heard of too, and ESL have lots of big events all the time. A huge TO, tournament organizer who puts on productions a lot and has loads of real influence. Some of the biggest shows in the world now, currently ESL still produce. the Cannabis Royale was a real interesting one because for me, it was the first opportunity to really be in front of a crowd, like on an esports stage, one of the first third-party events with all the best players from around the world, like hundreds of the best players. You saw a clip in that kind of opening show of like Zayt and Saf, who retired, but were two of the biggest players at the time. And it was a chance to cut my teeth with Fortnite as well. And that was a real big factor that I got into with Fortnite, and I continued that journey, and I'll get onto another slide in a bit, where that was a real big moment from a hosting perspective too. At the same time, I was working on new ways of getting forward. Again, always trying to think ahead to what the next big thing is. What's the next thing? What the next wave? What can I see is going to happen next and where I need to be? And I went into Sony Music, and I had a chat to them about esports. They wanted to kind of work with a lot of their kind of, their kind of music talent they had on their books, and say, how can we integrate, music talent with games and not make it look forced? Like, why on earth would we have Ollie Murs at a CSGO, arena going, yeah, this is really wicked, but he hasn't got a clue what CSGO is. Find better ways of merging the two things together, which made sense and didn't feel forced. And I pitched the idea of a podcast. And this is 2019, 2020, that's 2019, where podcasting wasn't that massive yet. It was just starting. I mean, now it's huge. I mean, I'm sure we all watch podcasts all the time, or listen to them at least anyway. But at the time, it was a real opportunity to bring esports talent into the kind of the gaming stuff, from the gaming world again, and interview them, talk to them, kind of create something new. And Sony actually went ahead and commissioned me to be to host a podcast. The network of creators that I knew, to bring them in as well. And we created a massive, a really popular podcast called the Savage Situation Gaming Podcast, which I'm really proud of to this day. And then we get to the later stuff. Now, I'm sure these guys up here as well, if you play Minecraft, anyone recognize who's up here? Do we know these guys? So we've got Tommy and Wilbur, and we've got like Filza and Tubbo, Nahachu, was it Rambo and Jack Manifold? So this is TwitchCon last year. TwitchCon last year, working with these creators, again, that kind of history of working with different creators has continued to follow me, and actually TwitchCon brought me in. Does anyone follow the Dream SMP? Anyone ever watch the Dream SMP or know what it is? Okay, right. Me neither till last year. And I had to ultimately create a show because you had such a core fan base. You can see the kind of the audience there and watching online. Such a multi-million fan base that I had to create something which made sense, which was clear, which was concise, but it wasn't just, Guff me coming in as a host and going, oh, hi, yeah, I'm here doing this Dream SMP thing. So what's Minecraft? Asking these really stupid, basic questions. I had to know the subject matter. And again, that's when research really came into play. And that was a really great opportunity because I kind of feel like all the kind of creators you saw from Legends of Gaming Live, this is like the new wave to a degree of creators. Probably much more, kind of the now, as opposed to the ones we saw earlier, who's still very relevant and still doing brilliant things. But these guys really came through during 2020, during the pandemic kind of time, and have become some of the biggest creators there are. But that production arm of myself as well, working in production, last year I produced a show for Sky Kids called Let's Game. And do you know who that is? Yami, do you know who that is? There's Theo, or Black Panther, there's Dan, and Ethan Gamer here. And we had a bunch of creators, and ultimately, again, TV asked me to come in and produce a show, because television is very kind of tentative. They don't really invest in games that much yet. But they saw that it was becoming a bigger and bigger kind of entity all the time. And here we have a show here that I was very lucky to create. Once again, working with talent and creators who I built a trust with over time, and we produced this amazing show called Let's Game, which was absolutely brilliant. And really proud of that as well. Now, it comes to Fortnite here as well, and I'll talk more about like the FNCS. Anyone watched FNCS or watches any Fortnite Championship Series stuff at all? Yes? A few? Brilliant. Okay. So, FNCS was the first time that I've really worked directly with a publisher on a one-for-one basis, okay? So Epic Games and myself, I was brought in during kind of like the beginning of 2020 to work with Epic Games directly, and there's our talent squad last year from Invitational that happened in North Carolina. But I was brought into the studio as part of the team, and I think a lot of this came from the track record, the past history of working within esports and working in the industry. A lot of it came as well from, my time with working as Disney, as I mentioned as well, family brand entertainment. And Fortnite considers itself very much, Epic does, a family brand as well. Brought in for that, trustworthy, I like to think, to do a good job and work as a host here. And for one of the first times as well, we're really working past Jinx you saw earlier on, as a real unit, a cohesive unit of teams, of casters, of analysts, of desk hosts. You've got casters like MDF and Jacob. You've got Minnie and Takata, who are your analysts here. You've got Kelly's my co-host on stage. You've got Vivid, who is obviously an old competitor and now a host alongside Taco as well. And they all make up a big, you all working together in tandem. That's one of the things that we talked about hosting earlier on as well. It's not just about the me and the me show, what I'm doing. You're working in unison with everybody else, because everyone's got their role, throwing from one thing to the other. And these guys need to be happy that they've been set up by the broadcast team. And then we on the stage need to know what we're saying going into the next thing as well. And all this comes from the gallery. All this comes from the upstairs, from the team, the production team who are behind, on the vision mixing side of things. We're talking about a certain clip on desk, Zeke might mention, oh, wasn't that an amazing play from Tayson and Mustache, wherever it might be. That high takeover they did on high ground coming into the final phase of final storm surge, whatever it might be. And they need to then have that kind of, they know that clip has been kind of cut already, and they need to throw to that and vice versa, catch it back afterwards and go into the next thing. So it's this constant moving machine. You're always thinking about what you want to do and how you're going to move things forward. And as a host, I'm always thinking about the next step, what everyone's next step is around. And not just on the talent team, but also in the team upstairs and in the gallery as well, because it's really important to have a great communication upstairs with that team who are giving you all the insight and all the info you need. And they're very different productions as well. You have the likes of the FNCS studio show where you've got a real set studio back of house with full teams. So we're all kind of there designed to create the show, put it all together. A lot of, as I mentioned, the obs team being a vital part, following the right element of gameplay at a right certain time, kind of almost foreseeing that foresight again, talking about the research and the knowledge of a game, I guess, down to its core. Knowing what you should be looking out for, knowing when you kind of feel there's something bubbling in the air that you definitely should be worth tracking and looking for as well. And I think that's what really is really interesting as well, is always thinking ahead to the kind of the other team behind the scenes, what they're getting down the lens, what they're getting down the camera, because ultimately my job is to communicate with you guys at home, but do so in a way that I'm not going, what did you say? Oh yeah, this. I'm kind of doing it as I'm being talked to while saying things as well. So it's very much experience based, but you'll find when you do go, your next role, whatever that might be, in the kind of more production scene behind the scenes, you'll always be thinking about the entire team. It's not just about the behind the scenes, it's in front of the team too, what they need, because I assure you, from a talent perspective as well, the more information, the more stuff that they have to work with, it makes the whole machine well-oiled and it works so much better, which is really, really important too. And then we have, there's that too. Oh, 1 second. So, there's that. Now, what I thought I'd do as well is earlier on last year, I was part of a show called Red Bull Homeground. Is there any Valorant players here? Any Valorant players? Okay. Did you watch Homeground last year? Check it out. A little bit. So Homeground last year was in Manchester. Now, in Manchester, they invited a lot of teams to come to Manchester to compete. And Valorant, it was obviously a pretty new game, came out in 2020. So it's relatively new still. And we ultimately had this show where we had to create a spectacle for everybody watching. At home, it's a big thing. Red Bull, obviously massive brand. A lot of money, want to make sure they have a great product. Valorant, Riot Games, massive publisher. Want to make sure they have a great product and a great brand as well. And they brought me in quite a last minute to be kind of a stage host of the show, to kind of have that kind of keep the wheels in motion. What I'll do now is I want to show you a clip from the beginning of the show. Now, the beginning of the show here, we did in 2 takes. And the first take was because it had to basically, it's 2 takes of me trying to do a walkthrough to get to the show start. And I'll ask you guys at the end where you think the first part ends and the live bit begins. Okay, see if you can spot it. I'm sure you can, but just keep an eye out for it and see that transition, how kind of seamless it is as well. So I'll play this to you now, as you can check it out. This is Red Bull Homeground last year. As I said, we'll break it down afterwards, but ultimately I wasn't given much to work with, but I had to utilize everything that I had in front of me and just make it up as I went along. There was no script, it was just me going for it. So I'll show you kind of, I guess, expertise I talked about as well, comes together and creates something like this. So I'll show you this now, check this out. I think this should start when I press this, okay. This is the last 10, this is the final day. You've got Cloud9 versus Crew, then 100 Thieves versus... to be determined, one of those 2 at a time. Here we go.
Hello,
Hello and welcome to Victoria Warehouse here in Manchester, the setting for Red Bull Home Ground 2022. My name's Adam Savage. I'm stood beside this fantastic Red Bull car. It's not mine, I wish it was. But let's do a whistle-stop tour of the surrounding area and what's actually happening here behind the scenes for you guys exclusively with me. You can see here starting actually, we have some portal-themed doorways here. Love this icebox and breeze. We can see their maps from Valorant. We have the lovely staff here in their white lab coats, this being a Radionite distribution facility, of course. And these fabulous cosplayers. Hi there, how are you? Amazing. Let's head inside to the actual building itself as well. This is where all the action is taking place, starting with the bar. Loves a bit of action. A few tip-balls too, obviously. The players, the broadcast talent team, all the fans are gathering here, enjoying the great food, which is themed around the agents as well. Lovely drinks going on. It's all happening right here with a stage very close by too. But we're also going to head upstairs. And that's exactly where the analysts, the casters, they're there too. Let's head up those, find them, and see what's going down. All right, here we go up the stairs and up to the balcony of unrelenting wonder, aka the VIP section. Over the last few days, all of our broadcasts have been hanging out up here, getting ready for the show, bringing us all the best stuff too. Let's head down this way because the studio is right around the corner here. Actually, we've got a glimpse of them right now. They are currently there, all rehearsing, getting ready for the main show. Hey guys, how's it going? Everyone's getting ready. Yinsu and the gang are looking forward to this one. And also this way, over the last few days, the players getting ready for the competition as well. You can see their area here, but no one's there. Why is that? Because they're getting ready for the main event, of course. Let's head back to one of the main focal points of the entire show, which is the stage area as well. There's Ginny. Hey, Ginny. Everyone's around here too. And of course, we mustn't leave without saying a big hello to the casters too. What's up, guys? Have a great show. We'll see you out there. Right, let's head downstairs. Let's go to the stage and see exactly what's in store for us. Whew. I can't wait for this, and I'm absolutely shattered. Whew. Here we go. Nearly there, nearly there. Been waiting all weekend for this. Oh my goodness, it's time. It's finals day here at Red Bull Home Ground 2022, Manchester! Woo! Here we go, everybody is ready. Hopefully you guys are too. It is time. Let the games begin!
All right, all right. Right, so there we go. What did you guys think of that? Good? Okay, fine. Out of 10? 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4? Someone say 4? Now, before I ask you, ask me anything. So that clip you saw there as well, that is, I guess, from my perspective, I'm thrown into the deep end. I'm being given kind of like the main bits of like information to hit. I know that the ending has to be me finishing at that stage on the money, on the beat, at that exact moment, and ending it so that the production team know exactly when I'm ending it. We haven't discussed it. It's in that moment, but they'll know by a certain action I do, like the kind of like the Freddie Mercury kind of jump in the air. I still cringe every time I hear my voice break at the end. I go, "Let the games begin." I can't stand it. It's the little things that really eat away at you. But you saw there as well. What I had is I was outside by the Red Bull car. Okay, now all I'm being given there is told you buy the Red Bull car. You've got the doorways, portals there as well. There's some lab coats and such. The bar. You've got to get your way to the staircase. So in that one take, I've got to do all that. I remember all that information. And what I'm doing as a host is I'm always thinking about the things that are visual indicators that A, tie in the game, B, tie in Red Bull, and C, competently tell the people at home what they're seeing and what they're watching. So that was one take, that whole thing, that whole all the way to the first staircase, and then I got upstairs, which is the second take. And then we've kind of rehearsed the beats of where I'm going to go and how I'm going to get where I need to be. And then did you see where, the transition, I got to the end, I came around the balcony and said, let's head downstairs. And that transition of me going down the stairs, and then suddenly you see me down the stairs, that went from pre-recorded content to suddenly the live show, right? So that kind of real kind of fluid kind of movement going through the because you kind of blocked it as to say, right, the production team told me, start a few steps up. When it's ready, when we cue you, then go. And you can see it almost feels like a seamless transition from one to the other. And that's the kind of like the communication you have with the team up top as well. Get to the end, hype the crowd up, and the show officially begins. And that for me is kind of like an example of like, from a hosting standpoint, when you're kind of in a situation where you aren't sometimes given everything in the moment, I think the experience speaks volumes, kind of knowing what those big words, those big moments are, the big things around you, and utilizing what you have visually as well. And I think hosts as well always kind of feel like they want to work with the camera as well, work with the people at home, kind of show them things and point things out. Like, you're not here today, but check this out. There's always a way of trying to create that energy. And I think that's a really important thing for a host. Energy is key. We mentioned energy earlier on. It really is about energy. I love Ronan and Finn's energy. Good energy. I liked it. Come on, let's go, bro. Big time. But from a hosting standpoint, these are all the different factors that I take into consideration when it comes to esports. I would love to answer your questions now. I hope I've covered a lot of things, but what the main thing is, you can see from a gaming standpoint, I started where I started that Christmas morning with that Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles and the Nintendo. Little did I think it was going to lead all the way to where I am now, speaking to you guys and kind of, with massive audiences around the world and doing what I do. But also the other side of it as well, which is never putting my eggs in a basket ever again. Remember that kind of phrase? It said, "Now, then it was all gone." It was all gone. There was a moment where it was really scary. And the same thing happened as well during COVID. When COVID happened, obviously my entire industry, my entire job is based around live shows, events, being together. The things with Snoop Dogg, when I'm in my pajamas in my bedroom, is few and far between. They happen a little bit. It's great. But it's not what, it was really hard to put all the eggs in one basket. And when I did that, it was really, I remember back to the time when the Jinx thing came to an end. I literally just got married. I thought, hey, I've got this massive amount of money I've got to pay back for all the wedding stuff. Oh, and I seem to have lost my major job. I think that's really key as well. When you're thinking about the industry is always kind of like making sure to have your fingers in as many pies as possible. Just try and explore new things. Find the trend that's happening. What's the new phase, the new trend in things? What do you think is going to be the next thing? And always keeping your finger on the pulse with that. And as I mentioned as well, networking is really, really important. For the technical standpoint, obviously, you guys are going to learn that, all the technological, all the bits around the games and all that kind of stuff. But from a personal perspective, creating that network is massively important, because when it comes to getting the work in the freelance economy, it makes a huge difference to your future, knowing that you've got work coming in, you can guarantee what is coming your way. Because esports is getting bigger all the time. I mentioned earlier on, 45 million for a tournament this summer. That's insane. And it's going to continue to grow and grow and grow. Their player base is getting bigger, new games coming out, new tournaments kicking off as well, third party and made by the publishers too. Thank you very much for having me here. Hopefully that's been some insight and some interesting kind of stories for you guys, a bit different to other things you may have heard thus far. But thank you very much. And I'm now willing to take any questions you may have about anything at all, if you do have any questions. Thank you very much, Jin. Thanks. I've also realized in the last few days, I think I want to be like Jin one day. He's the guy. He's my guy. He's my idol. I love you, man. Just is. Look at that red blazer. Oh, love it. Right. Any questions that you have at all? Yes. Go ahead. Oh, there's a mic. Great. Okay.
I was wondering from the perspective of talent and the communication you have with the producer or the TD. Could you give some perspective on what that's like at like a tier 1 event? Because a problem I tend to always have is like knowing when to speak to talent, because there can be times where, I mean, talent, the whole point of talent is that they can talk to each other for however long you want, right? They can fill for hours if they wanted to. Yeah. And so finding the gaps to be able to talk to them, to give them information. From your perspective, when's the best time to do that? Or is that something you talk about beforehand?
It's a really good question, actually. Really, really good question. What was your name?
Lou.
Lou. I think Luke or Lou? Lou. I think it's a really good question, because I think one thing you always come up against is different personality types, first and foremost. There's different talent work in different ways. And I think it's about kind of gauging how they work, firstly. For me personally, I like a tier 1 event. There are certain meets. So what tends to happen is, before a show kind of kicks off, you obviously have your rehearsal days. But prior to that rehearsal, there tends to be kind of the conversations that happen prior to that about what the kind of ins and outs of how the show's going to look from a blocking standpoint, like how the beats of the show are going to be. Talking to talent's kind of an interesting one, because I think personally, you should always have, any opportunity to talk to talent you can to offer information is massively helpful. And if it becomes a point of like, what we tend to do now, it sounds like I've given the ins and outs here. Things like breakout WhatsApp groups have become like really, really kind of normal now. So you'll have like, a desk hosting WhatsApp group. You'll have like a, kind of like a broadcast team. There'll be different groups for different things, which kind of really help when you want to kind of get like a question directly answered to someone and asked to someone quite quickly. When it comes to talking to production as well, as I said, the more you work in the business, the more peers, more friends you're going to make along the way as well. And you're going to understand how they work as well. Because behind the scenes, when you all collaboratively are working in that production team, you definitely find a way of communicating and knowing what you want in that moment. From a talent point of view as well, 9 times out of 10, the way the technological setup will be, if you don't know this already, will be I'll have like an earpiece of some sort that'll be directed into the kind of like usually the arena manager or the stage manager or the desk manager, whatever it might be, the production, calling the shots ultimately, and when the kind of cues are coming, and there'll be countdowns and that kind of stuff. Usually I have in my ear, I have the show, I have all the audio coming in from that production team. Sometimes the audio from the actual feed of the show, like the music that is counting down towards like time to go into the break or go into whatever it might be. Sometimes you'll count it down. It all depends on how the production, I think, tends to want to work as well and what works for talent. I think, goes your question, I think there's never a time to not, that a talent would, I like to think this about peers of mine, I don't think there's ever a time that they wouldn't want to hear from the producer or hear from someone in their ear about something. If it's something helpful, I think you always have, you want to have as much information as possible. Sometimes too many cooks do spoil the broth, and there's too many people talking about things and wanting certain things, then that might become a little bit messy. But more times often than not, there's one person who's the go-to in your ear, who's the person who you kind of know, okay, that's the person who is talking to me and calling the shots. And again, having worked on international events as well, sometimes you get international production teams who have accents, who have slightly broken English, things are a bit different. You have to roll with the punches really and kind of know how people work. But I think it's a really good question in the sense that I think everyone is different the way they prefer to work. And I think be open about establishing that early on with the talent directly and just getting a clear understanding of how they best work and in the time frames they want to do things in. And that usually pays dividends, really. Does that answer your question? Hopefully. No worries. Good question. Anyone more? Yeah, absolutely. What's the question? Oh, we'll come with the mic. I can hear you, but it looks cooler if you have the mic. Okay. Go ahead.
Will you be participating in the 2023 Blast Paris Major for CS?
Well, I personally?
Yeah.
I'd love to. I think so. For me, my history of Blast was like during Blast evolved into a different way. So Blast now are they are one of the tier 1 production companies for sure, 100%. And when Blast first began, the Blast Pro Series was it was ultimately an exhibition of Counter-Strike. Has anyone seen the Blast Pro Series or Blast Premier? Do you know what I'm talking about? I don't know if you okay. So with Blast Pro Series, it began as like an exhibition. So it would be a case of the idea being is it was actually trying to get esports to a mainstream audience. And that's one of the biggest, the word's not issue, but one of the biggest things is now is like it's mainstream versus like online, which is the mainstream, but mainstream is still seen by many as like television or kind of being on the kind of on that kind of thing. For me, Blast Pro Series was an exhibition of the best teams, Counter-Strike teams, coming together in a tournament. There's a big prize at the end of it. It's an arena show, so people locally all over the world can come and watch their favorite teams compete. And we went to like Brazil and went to Denmark, all these different places. But then it evolved from that because they wanted to create a series which was more kind of consistent throughout the year. So Blast Premier was born. And now James Banks is the host, I think, the majority of it. He's one of the Counter-Strike hosts. And there's a lot of and the great thing is as well, from a talent perspective, we kind of tend to work with each other quite a lot, like in different things or cross paths. So there are a lot of the kind of the casters, like CS casters. The difference with CS as well compared to other games that I've worked is it's got very much a legacy factor to it in the sense that CS has been around for a long time. So you've got casters who usually have gone from being players who then have gone on to become like the analysts and the cast of today. Like Moses, for instance, who's gone from being, kind of a player to then caster, Team Liquid, then coming back to, manager, then coming back. So you've got a lot of that going on. But I mean, to answer your question, I would love to, but I think they've got quite a core team now of Counter-Strike, and it's very kind of like they all quite Counter-Strike. When it was an exhibition, when it was like more of like a kind of like a TV, I guess, thing, different. But I think that's more core. It's different.
Thank you. My second question is it's a bit of a weird one. Have you ever met Launders, and if you have, what's he like? I have met Launders. I've spent many meals and time. I've spent a lot of time with that Launders. Absolute legends. Like, does he come across like that online? Yeah, I love him personally. He's him and Scrawny are great, and Launders is really fun. We funny story for you. There was one time in a bar after a show we were celebrating. I think we were in Madrid, kind of like having a drink afterwards, kind of saying, yeah, that was amazing, and
I really encouraged him to climb a tree. I was like, you've got to climb this tree. I think that you should definitely climb the tree. I think if you don't climb the tree, it's a real disappointment to everyone here. And he was like, do you reckon? Do you reckon? I was like, yeah, Launders climbed the tree. He climbed the tree, couldn't get down from the tree. Was stuck up in the tree for quite some time. And I just kept standing there going, I told you not to climb it. He was like, you told me to climb it. So we had one of those kind of moments, but it was very funny. But yeah, really good guy. And I think that's the thing you'll find as well, is when working with talent as well, there's a real kind of hybrid as well of talent and the difference is it's a strange word because I see production as talent as well. I'm not just like saying that to say it. Genuinely, production help make our job better and help make us better on the stage or whatever we're doing. And that relationship you have is really important. So the production talent as well as the broadcast talent, a lot of times you'll find this kind of like hybrid kind of like cohesiveness where you kind of all kind of hang out together a little bit and you get to know people and certain ways that certain people work. I've actually been very lucky as well that there's certain production talent now who will let me know about hosting opportunities because we have that trust factor built in as well, which is really important. So yeah, he's a good lad. Definitely a good lad. 100%. Any more questions? Yes, my man Finn, what's up? There's a mic. I can hear you, but I think the microphone, yeah, as I said, looks really awesome. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have like kind of any techniques or personal things you do to like kind of like practice or get better quicker at hosting?
Yeah, I definitely. Yes, a good question again. Great questions. I definitely do. I think for me, so earlier on, I gave Ronan the script, didn't I? And I gave Ronan the script, and you had all those words to read, and it can get really bloody difficult because you've got all these different words. You're trying to say these things, and you're trying to focus, and you're trying to say something at home, but you've got this card. You're doing this the entire time, and it's really hard to navigate. For me, the bullet point side of things is when I've got the course, because I've kind of gained that ability now to almost weave sentences together because you can just kind of go, and next up that's right. And I'm giving myself beats that look natural, but I'm actually thinking in the moment, what the hell's that person's name? What the hell am I doing next? Because I'm just trying to remember things sometimes. And it's almost about pacing yourself, and breathing is really important. It sounds really basic to breathe, but sometimes I would get scripts and go, just try and say things really fast to not mess it up, but I was messing it up by saying it too fast, if that makes sense. And I learned that with Jinx as well, when I had all these scripts I had to read for different shows and get on them, and I felt very hard up. I didn't want to miss any of the words. Like if you're reading like an actor or whatever it might be, I never wanted to go off script and start ad-libbing. But actually, sometimes in those moments, that's when you get the best stuff. That's when the kind of the best things happen. One thing I didn't mention as well actually is I could definitely talk about is working with orgs as well, because that might come up for you guys too. When you're working in kind of a production, from a production standpoint too, you may get the opportunity to work with orgs directly quite a lot. I'm sure we mentioned some already. I've been lucky to work with orgs like Guild and XL and others, where you have a relationship with like the actual organization themselves to kind of celebrate their own players and work with them too. I think it's really important that that's also definitely more work is coming in that world as well. Actually working as a producer or one part of the production team with one of the orgs as well, because they are creating a lot more content now around their players, around their brands, and that's definitely worth exploring too. So I definitely say that's also another part of the business. But yeah, go back to your question. I think there are other, technique-wise as well. As I said, it's experience. Like the weird thing is, like if you're in front of like a crowd like here today, and I always find it like when it's like a more intimate setting like this, it's more daunting than when you've got like a giant arena, because you don't tend to make eye contact with many people. You're going, yeah, awesome, great, but as long as you kind of do like kind of keep looking around, you don't really think about it. But now I can see all your faces. It's a bit like, oh Jesus, everyone's looking at me. This is a bit weird. But you know what I mean? It's very different when you're kind of in that kind of arena vicinity. I think as well, like, you saw that clip when I was in my show reel where I kind of say, hi, Rafferty, who's my oldest. He's 5 years old now. And I did a little video for him because I thought in that moment as well, being a host and doing something like this cool with this amount of stuff going on around me was a real moment. I didn't want to kind of like, I wouldn't forget it myself, but I wanted to share it like with him, and one day, and he can see that too. And I think as well with the reason that I kind of did that too is because I'm never taking it for granted, but also when you have an audience who are watching, like you guys are here today, but if you have like an audience, for instance, never forget that they're there to be entertained, have fun, and you want to get them on side. You want to kind of create a relationship with the audience as well, which is kind of a key thing for a host really, is to have a good rapport with the audience watching at home, to make sure that you connect in some capacity, and you kind of go, oh, this person's okay. I can trust them to give me the information correctly. I can trust this to happen, and rather than going, oh, that was really awkward, that was really weird. That does happen sometimes, and that comes, I think, with experience too. Hopefully that answers your question, Finn. You're welcome, buddy. You're welcome. Any more questions at all? Yes, go ahead. Ronan, my man. What's up? Oh, wait for the microphone. Sure. Yeah. As I can hear you perfectly fine, but this looks a lot better. Okay. Wicked.
So with like hosting especially, it's that some people, like me just then, that I really struggle to like read, like straight up like read out loud, especially as you said, you keep looking around, you keep looking at that, looking at the camera, looking at the people. Would you say you would find it easier to like kind of like spitball, just keep saying things, like have certain points that you like want to talk about or that you've been told to talk about, rather than trying to like memorize the whole thing in 2 seconds and juggling 3 things at once?
Great question again. I think it's a lot about the thing is, when you've got a script in front of you, like if you're hosting something, it can if you are struggling to read those words, like that's why those kind of like the abbreviated kind of bullet points sometimes works better, because you can kind of be a bit more expansive with how you say things. Like it says hello, welcome. I could be like, what's going on, Nottingham? I could kind of make that my own, not having to necessarily say hello, welcome to the show. But over time, experience will definitely dictate how you pace yourself, because pacing is what you'll find. Like if I was to say to you, right, Ronan, here's a microphone, go out and present to everybody now for the next hour, go, you'd be like, that's a lot, isn't it? It's quite a hard thing. You can't. It comes with time and practice, and you develop your own. When I first started out, I was of an era where there used to be a really popular thing on TV called T4. You guys wouldn't know that is, I'm sure. But Channel 4 used to do a thing called T4. Channel 4's on television. Probably don't watch too much television either. But T4 was like a music kind of show, like a magazine-based show. And there was a couple of hosts on there, and I would go, oh, when I host, I want to be just like that person. When I host, I want to be just like the way that they do it, because that's really good. But very quickly I learned, why am I trying to be like somebody else when I am who I am? Well, I have the way that I do things. And that was one thing that I kind of had to really kind of work out, was if you don't do something so well that you find that maybe reading, might be kind of like, getting points as much across. If you've got the general beats that you need to kind of deliver in like a piece, totally make it your own, because that's what's going to separate you from the rest of the pack when it comes to them hiring you for something. Because if you're all very kind of like, very rigid about reading every word for word, yeah, that can be great sometimes because you're getting the words out. But if there's a certain Ronan sparkle that you do, for instance, that's different to somebody else, or you have your own way of doing something, that could be a lovable trait that could kind of make it better. Does that make sense? But what you want to do, whatever you feel comfortable doing, don't feel that you have to do it a certain way because somebody else has done it. Obviously, there is a certain way of delivering information and moving a show along. But I would say for you, yeah, whatever makes you feel comfortable, and then kind of work on that from there. Have like a base level of like, okay, I can do this pretty competently, and be confident in yourself. It's really hard because confidence comes from experience. But just have that confidence, like to say, right, I'll work on this and it will come to me eventually. And that should be fun.
Totally, like, not specific, but like people with like dyslexia and whatever, like it becomes difficult to read. But like when you're socializing normally, like you can speak normally. It's not like something to do with you, so that's to do with confidence and whatever. Yeah. So to be able to keep confidence and keep going without like crumbling under the thing that you can't read or something like that, then to keep going. So you'll say that's a good thing to try to get a skill of getting under control.
Well, there's definitely, I think there's definitely software now as well. Like one thing we have, obviously auto cue is something you use sometimes. You've got like, I'm looking at the camera down the barrel here, and then sometimes you have like a kind of scrolling text. Yeah, that kind of like is on the screen. That is literally right there. So you don't need like an iPad or like a card. You can kind of read it from there, and there's a technique behind that too. But there's definitely, as far as I know, there is software out there that can help specifically with things like dyslexia, which can, I think, actually help you navigate like through words and whatnot more easily. I'll try and find something and I'll let you know about it if I can send it with Jin or something. But there's definitely ways around that. Memory is a big part of it too. Like a lot of times I'm memorizing stuff because I find actually cards can be a hindrance a lot of the time. Where I'm like, if I've got something, I look at my card. I can't be looking at you guys because I'm constantly doing this, aren't I? The entire time reading off that, and I find it kind of like a crutch. I think very easy it can be a crutch. So I can kind of use that kind of like almost like a shield to kind of protect me from like, I don't want to look at anybody, so I'm going to carry on reading my card. Whereas in reality, I should be going, hey, how's it going? Hey. And it's a very different kettle of fish. Does that make sense? So I think developing your own technique, I think definitely with the memory side of things, it does help to have a good memory, particularly with words. But it's a good question. Thanks, Renan. Any more cues? Any more cues from anybody at all? Yes, another one at the back here. I don't know how I'm doing for time here, Jin. I'm just spitballing. I'm just good. Yeah, great. Yes, go ahead, mate. Lou?
I was wondering if there were any big differences between live esports events and TV that you found that perhaps you weren't expecting. Because I don't know, on surface level, I suppose hosting a TV show, a pre-recorded TV show versus a live TV show versus an esports event. What are the big differences that you found, and is there any issues you had going into live esports events after coming from TV?
Yeah, again, awesome, mate. That's a really good question. There's definitely massive differences. I think because esports is such a live-based production, so I don't think you're rarely going to find times when you're recording esports-related content post it happening. Most of it happens minute to minute. So you'll go from. I mean, the interesting thing is the dynamic of different games have different needs and wants from a beat standpoint, right? So you saw FNCS there earlier on today. Now, FNCS is a show where, if you're familiar with Fortnite and the competitive side of things, you've got yourself 100 players, usually duos or trios sometimes, mainly duos though. 100 players, so 50 duos going into the lobby at the same time, which can be an issue in itself when it comes to like from a technical standpoint, like, you know, on the same servers and whatnot. They go into the game together. They play the game. Games tend to last a certain amount of time, about 26 minutes, give or take, you know, whatever happens. The game ends. But because of the need for multi-regional kind of different broadcasts of the same game, it's not like if you're doing Counter-Strike, for instance, where you've got, you know, Astralis versus Na'Vi, okay? And you know that, right? We're sat down here. It's a best of 3. Every game pretty much lasts this long. Could go 15-0, could not, whatever might happen. And you've got best of 3s usually, best of 5s come championship, kind of finals, whatnot. That's a certain amount of time where you've got breathing time for the casters and breathing time for it to sit. Because after the games happen, then you've got that kind of window of like, okay, let's chat about it, players are breaking, whatnot. With games like Fortnite, you've got a 6-minute window, if that, in between games to deliver what you need to say, what just happened, talk about leaderboards, talk about this, and then go straight back into the next game. Just because the nature of the game, it has that kind of wave. And one of my co-hosts, Frankie Ward, you know who Frankie is, who's a host, who's brilliant. She works across those different games. Frankie was saying recently she did FNCS for the first time, and she'd been used to a kind of like a CS. I think she'd be more than happy to share this. She was used to a CS kind of format, like I just mentioned, and it's quite like oh wow, this is different for that beats thing, and it's just because you get accustomed to a certain way a show moves, like a way according to the way the game does, according to the games you play for a certain thing. And I think that all kind of, I think maybe genres with games, you have like, kind of like your FPSs, you have your MOBAs, all these different kind of genre of game will have different things dictating on that. But from the TV versus the online standpoint or the live, TV is a lot more pre-recorded. I think TV, because of the parameters around like, copywriting and that kind of things that you don't want to kind of like, you don't want to kind of what's that kind of terminology when it's like when you're kind of like undue prominence, when you're kind of showing something, if I'm doing a show and I'm wearing a T-shirt that says Coca-Cola or something, right? I can't do that because I'm just showing that one brand. I can't wear that brand. There's a lot more boxes you need to check for things like TV because it's a very different way. It's a very different audience and a very different kind of set of rules ultimately. If you're broadcasting primarily on Twitch or on kind of on YouTube, wherever it might be, the rules are different regarding what you can and can't do. Not necessarily at the branding side of things, but from a VOD standpoint, TV tends to be more pre-recorded, and I think that's what you'll always find. And that's been the biggest challenge as well for esports, is because for a lot of production companies or a lot of TV channels, you have an esports event, and it's what is considered not really that evergreen. Because if you have you have an esports event, like you're showing the kind of the global finals of something, Dota 2's the international's got a $27 million prize pool, massive event. It happens online, but it also happens on TV. The moment it's finished, it's been seen online. So immediately it becomes content that is in the past to a degree. Yes, it's relevant for the next day or two, but the amount of money from a TV company that are going to invest into showing that by paying Valve for Dota's, to use the license to show the game, covering the event, all those different things, you've got to pay all that money just to show it, and then it doesn't become evergreen, because why would you show that in 3 weeks' time when everyone knows the results and everyone's seen that already? It doesn't become as kind of lucrative. Whereas online, you broadcast it from wherever you are, it's out there, it's done, and people do watch it on, going back because it's on-demand content. I think a lot of times TV isn't as easy to kind of have on-demand, and that's been the biggest factor. And the things I've seen, like work with the BBC over the last few years and different things, they're really interested in esports. They really want to make more esports content, but they're just really struggling to find that way of doing it where they can justify the budget and justify the money, when it's a lot more difficult to do that when online can do it a lot easier and cheaper, because paying like Riot, for instance, have their own studio, their own setup for things like Valorant or League, where the LEC and such, where they have full ownership of their own brand, their own competitive kind of like format. And if you want to show it, then you've got to pay them a lot of money to show it because it's theirs and they own the whole thing. Whereas third-party events are a lot more, I guess, have a lot more ease of kind of getting out there and doing different things. So, make sense? Yeah. Cool. Anybody else? Is that fine? Good. Any more questions? No? Well, guys, this has been awesome. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. I've been talking like my life story and all sorts, and hopefully it's been interesting. I'll be around any questions you have afterwards as well if you want to ask me about... there he is. Thank you for having me. And good luck. Good luck. It's an amazing world, esports, and it's an industry that is continuing to grow and grow and grow all the time. And trust me, from a host standpoint, for you guys who are going out there and doing your degrees and such, and your courses and going into an esports space, utilize everything that you have at your disposal now for the future. You know, utilize. It sounds really tedious, but utilize things like LinkedIn. Utilize. You know, I'm watching regularly now on LinkedIn. I have like, and it sounds like because it's very business focused, but I'm seeing people regularly posting, like Mr. Beast is regularly posting on LinkedIn, all the cool things that he's doing. It's LinkedIn. You would never associate it with like YouTube as such. But esports is really growing on there too, that network you can build, those kind of simple things you can do to do that now and start growing your own kind of like identity in that space. Because even now, what's interesting about kind of like the production teams as well, is you'll see like major production team members like are sought after by publishers because they want them, because not only have they got like a social presence, but they're also influential in the game as well. The people that work, but the ops team is hugely influential. Like, you know, behind that, a guy called Prius that I know from the CSGO world, you know, DJ's great, and he's been an observer now for the last, I don't know, like 8-9 years. And he is working relentlessly, and he's become a voice of the community too. And he's in the observer team, which is a great job. But it's one of these things where the more you can do before that happens now, and just start growing a network and finding the kind of channels you want to go down, be it a certain game, be it a certain avenue. I mentioned orgs as well, people that you want to work with. There's Discord groups. There's all different ways you can kind of get in and find people and start to grow that, because I think it'll have a massive influence down the way. And always look out for the next wave and what's coming, really. I think that's going to be a really big factor too. I think that's really, really important. But I've really enjoyed talking to you guys. Hopefully you've learned something as well from a host's point of view, which is it's tricky because it's a freelance economy, but it's one of the best things ever, and I've had some of the greatest experiences of my life because of it as well. So best of luck out there. Thanks for having me, and enjoy the rest of your week. And thanks for being here today. Thanks.
What an inspiring, exciting, flavoursome, seasoned, exciting experience that was. Hopefully you're all fully charged and ready for this evening. Something's happening this evening, right? What's that? What? What? What's happening tonight, folks? It's the Confetti Fighters Championship. Let me hear some noise. All right. How many of you have signed up for it? Why haven't the rest of you? How many of you are coming tonight? Why aren't the rest of you? Tonight is going to be just as, in fact, maybe not as explosive as this was, but it definitely will be explosive. I even wore a fancy top. Okay. Prepare yourselves. The next 3 hours of preparation that will take place in here, if you want to have a moment to get involved and check it out and look at how production is done for an event, feel free to stick around. If not, prepare yourselves over the next 3 hours for the most explosive, exciting 10th/11th Confetti Fighters Championship at Confetti, but it's going to be the first time it's in Confetti X, so super, super excited. Before we wrap up, one more time, show some love for Adam Savage.